Hello, listener. Welcome to Juniverse Cheating Stories. Please subscribe for more videos.
As the sterile hospital room walls seemed to close in around her, Erica Cole struggled to take a breath, her lungs constricting with each frantic gasp. The phone in her trembling hand felt like an anchor, its weight heavy as her voice cracked with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Do not leave her alone, please," she begged. Her words barely coherent as they escaped her lips, her pulse hammering in her ears. The phone call she had just received from her 10-year-old daughter, Ava, haunted her thoughts. She could still hear the fragile sobs, the broken words laced with panic. "Mom." Grandma and Grandpa just drove off. Ava's voice trembled through the phone. "They said I'm old enough to stay by myself, but I don't want to be alone, Mom. I'm scared." Every word felt like a punch to the gut, each one sinking deeper into her chest. Her worst nightmare had just come to life. While Erica lay helpless in the hospital, recovering from a life-threatening surgery, her mother-in-law, Eleanor, and father-in-law, Harold, had abandoned Ava at home, alone. A wave of terror crashed over her as she pictured her daughter, vulnerable and scared, trapped in the dark silence of their house. "Are you serious right now?" Erica's voice trembled with outrage. "You left her alone? For a party? In what world is that okay?" On the other end of the line, Eleanor's voice cut through the panic with cold indifference. "It's just a birthday celebration, Erica. Ava didn't want to go, so we're going without her. She'll be fine." Erica's heart twisted with anger, the room around her feeling smaller with each word that came from Eleanor's mouth. "She's 10. She's terrified. You can't just leave her alone like that." The words felt like a heavy stone pressing against her chest, suffocating her. The searing pain from her surgery, an injury that should have been the focus of her suffering, paled in comparison to the gut-wrenching betrayal that boiled inside her. For years, Erica had endured the scorn of her in-laws, their silent judgment constantly hanging over her. They had never truly accepted her, never seen her as good enough for their son, Adam. But Adam had always been her shield, his love and loyalty the fortress between her and their disapproval. Since his tragic death in a car accident 2 years ago, however, that shield had crumbled, leaving Erica to bear the full brunt of their disdain. And now, with Ava's innocence and safety on the line, Erica saw the truth for what it was, a lie she had been living, one built on false hope that perhaps, just maybe, things could improve for the sake of family. But today, Erica saw how blind she had been. The very people she had trusted to protect her daughter had abandoned her when she was at her most vulnerable, and it felt like a betrayal so deep, it cut through her very soul. The phone call had shattered the fragile peace that had clung to their family for years. Harold's voice, dismissive and harsh, snapped through the phone line. "You're overreacting, Erica. She's fine. Let her learn independence." Erica's hands gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles white with rage. She could feel the heat rising inside her, the anger threatening to consume her whole. She knew it wasn't about independence, it was about neglect. And deep down, she knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a decision made by people who claimed to love Ava, yet had no problem abandoning her when she needed them most. Ava deserved better than this. She deserved more than empty words and false promises. And Erica would make sure that the people who had failed her would never get the chance to hurt her again. Shocked and seething with fury, Erica's first instinct was to call her closest friend, Janet. Janet had always been her lifeline, the one person who could steady her when everything else felt like it was falling apart. "I need you to check on Ava now." Erica's voice was laced with desperation, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I can't believe this is happening." On the other end, Janet's voice was calm, the steady anchor Erica desperately needed. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," she assured, her tone soothing despite the panic. "Don't worry, she's safe with me." But Erica couldn't shake the dread clawing at her chest. She knew that this betrayal would only spiral, that it wouldn't be over just because Ava was safe for the moment. A sharp pang of rage and fear gripped her, and the hours that followed were consumed by the sound of ringing phones, tearful moments, and a desperate resolve. In the quietest, most painful of moments, a decision was made. Erica dialed Child Protective Services. Her fingers shook as she recounted the chilling details to the social worker. They left her alone, just abandoned her at home. She explained, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My daughter, she's 10. She's scared. She shouldn't have been left alone." The social worker's voice was blunt, almost clinical. "It's child endangerment," she said without hesitation. "You need to report this. We'll investigate." It felt like a weight lifted off Erica's chest, but only slightly. The knowledge that the authorities were involved did little to ease the storm of emotions churning inside her. She couldn't stop thinking of Ava, her daughter's eyes, wide with fear, trembling in the dark. The days that followed were a blur. Erica was discharged from the hospital, physically weak but fueled by an intense, unwavering resolve. As soon as her feet crossed the threshold of their home, she could feel it. The betrayal lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. Ava was safe for now, but Erica had no idea what lay ahead. How could things ever be normal again? The texts and calls from Eleanor and Harold began flooding her phone. They accused her of overreacting. Guilt tripped her with lines like, "We're her grandparents. We have rights." Their voices were sharp, full of anger and resentment. But Erica couldn't bring herself to care. She had no time for their self-serving tantrums. With a calmness that surprised even her, Erica pressed ignore and then fired off a text message to each of them. "You have responsibilities. You failed her. Until you take responsibility for what you did, you will never see my daughter again." The calls didn't stop. They came in endless waves, each one more desperate, more accusatory than the last. But Erica didn't waver. With each call she ignored, her resolve only grew stronger. The situation escalated quickly when Eleanor took to social media, posting a long-winded, tear-streaked message designed to paint herself as the victim. She claimed Erica had turned the family against her and accused her daughter-in-law of alienating her from her only granddaughter. It was a blatant attempt to manipulate the narrative. But Erica could already feel the tide shifting. As the post gained traction, cracks began to appear. Family members who had once been blind to Eleanor's behavior started questioning the details. Was it really a mistake to leave a child alone in a house? Was Ava really fine? Or had she been terrified, alone in the dark? Slowly, the truth began to seep through the cracks in Eleanor's story. Erica, though still reeling from the betrayal, couldn't help but feel a strange sense of vindication as the lies began to unravel. But the battle was far from over. Eleanor and Harold, not ones to back down, quickly hired a lawyer and began pushing for grandparent visitation rights. It was clear they weren't going to let this go without a fight. The legal battle loomed on the horizon, but Erica's nerves were steady, her anger simmering just beneath the surface. They thought they could tear her family apart. They were wrong. She would fight for Ava, no matter what it took. And this time, there would be no turning back. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating, as Erica stood in her living room, her heart racing. The front door was pounded with urgency, heavy, frantic knocks that echoed through the house like thunder. Harold and Eleanor had arrived, uninvited and unrelenting, demanding to see Ava. Erica's pulse quickened as her security system buzzed with a warning notification. She stared at the screen, her fingers trembling as she read the alert. The message was clear. Someone was at the front door, and from the sound of it, they weren't leaving without a fight. A cold sweat broke out across Erica's forehead. She hadn't expected this. Not this soon. They had pushed her into a corner, but she wouldn't let them get away with this reckless, selfish behavior. She could hear Harold's voice growing louder, his anger matching the intensity of the pounding on the door. "You have no right to keep us away from our granddaughter," Harold shouted, his voice filled with venom. "What's wrong with you? You're breaking up this family." Erica's fingers curled into fists, her entire body shaking with a mix of fear and fury. With every word, every accusation, the rage inside her built like a wave crashing against the shore, threatening to break. She stood behind the door, her back pressed against the frame, trying to steady her breath as her mind screamed for action. "You've already broken this family." Erica's voice cracked as she shouted through the door, the words laced with the pain of the truth. "You abandoned my daughter, left her terrified, and now you have the nerve to barge in here like nothing happened?" Harold's voice became more frantic, more desperate, as he pounded against the door again, demanding entry, refusing to back down. But before things could escalate further, the sound of sirens echoed down the street, and an officer appeared at the front steps, stepping between the in-laws and the door. "Everyone needs to step back," the officer commanded, his tone firm. His presence alone seemed to shake the atmosphere, and for the first time since this all started, Erica felt a flicker of relief. The officer's voice rang out again, authoritative, and unyielding. "You are not welcome here. Step away from the door and leave." Eleanor and Harold hesitated, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on them. But Harold was relentless, still shouting as the officer motioned for him to leave. "You don't get to make this decision, Erica," he yelled, his anger still boiling over. "This isn't over." As the officer guided them off the property, Erica could feel the fury slowly start to subside, but the ache in her chest didn't. Her legs felt weak as she watched them walk away. Knowing this battle was far from over, her entire body trembled, the adrenaline still coursing through her, but her resolve only solidified. The door clicked shut behind her with a finality that reverberated through the house. Silence fell over the room, oppressive and suffocating. Erica stood still for a moment, her heart still hammering in her chest, the weight of the confrontation lingering in the air. The officer's words echoed in her mind. "You don't have to fight this alone." She didn't know how long she stood there, frozen in place, but when she finally moved, it was to gather her strength. This fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Ava. About protecting her from the people who had caused her so much harm. Erica's fists unclenched, but her heart was steeled. She knew that the hardest part was still ahead. But no matter what happened next, she was ready. Ready to face the legal battles, the emotional toll, the lies, whatever it took. This was the moment where she drew the line, and no one, not even family, would ever cross it again. The investigation into Eleanor and Harold's neglect was still ongoing, and though the authorities moved at a pace that seemed painfully slow, the emotional toll on Erica was immediate and unrelenting. Each day brought new challenges, small, silent battles that weighed on her heart more than any legal document or accusation ever could. Ava, once the vibrant, carefree child who could light up a room with her laughter, was now a shadow of herself. She clung to her mother like a lifeline, her small hands gripping Erica's with a desperation that cut deep. Gone were the carefree days when Ava would run through the yard, laughing and shouting in delight. Instead, her gaze was haunted, her movements cautious, as if every step she took was measured by fear. Erica's heart shattered every time she saw her daughter shrink away from the world she had once embraced. Ava's trust had been shattered by the very people who were supposed to protect her, and every tear Ava shed was a reminder of the battle Erica was fighting, a battle that was as much for her daughter's emotional healing as it was for her safety. But as Erica stood in the doorway, watching Ava cautiously play in the yard, something shifted. Ava had her back to Erica, but there it was, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corners of her lips. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. For a brief moment, Erica saw the flicker of the child her daughter had been before everything had fallen apart. A wave of fierce pride washed over her as she realized that, despite everything, Ava was still fighting. She wasn't giving up. Erica knew, in that moment, that she had made the right choice. No matter how painful, no matter the consequences, she had chosen to fight for her daughter. She had chosen to protect Ava, to shield her from the very people who had caused her harm. And there would be no going back, not now, not ever. No amount of guilt trips, no amount of legal threats would make her step back from the line she had drawn in the sand. The legal battles with Eleanor and Harold were far from over. Their efforts to regain control, to weasel their way back into Ava's life, continued, unrelenting, fueled by entitlement and the belief that they had a right to be involved, no matter the cost. The court dates loomed on the horizon, a reminder that this fight was far from finished. But Erica was ready. For Ava, for their future. She would face whatever came next with the same unwavering determination. She would protect her family at all costs, even if that meant standing alone. No one, no family, no one, would ever put her daughter in harm's way again. Erica had learned the hard way that trust could be shattered in an instant, but so too could the strength of a mother's love. And that love? It was unbreakable.